What's up, Internet? Welcome to Once Over. I'm Kaylee, and today we're going to be giving the once over to It's Pat.
Yeah, oh, do you know what I especially love? Our good movies.
You're kidding. I love good movies, too.
There will be spoilers.
Give it a good once-over.
Giving us the once-over.
Giving him the once-over.
Give me a once-over.
Down to give us the once-over.
For a routine once-over.
Once-over.
Oh, just once over lightly.
So why are we talking about It's Pat today? Well, the answer to that is because you guys overwhelmingly think that this is the worst SNL skit turned into a movie that has ever existed. I recently reviewed Coneheads, and I gave you guys a little bit of a clickbaity title where I asked if that was the worst SNL skit turned into a movie. And yeah, you guys don't think that that's accurate at all. You guys all think that the absolute worst one is It's Pat. So I decided that we should probably investigate further, and we're gonna check out It's Pat today, but we're also gonna do a bunch of other SNL skits that got turned into movies, and we're gonna try to figure out which is the worst. Is it It's Pat?
I don't know.
Probably. So of course this movie came out in 1994, and it was directed by Adam Bernstein, who went on to do some things, like I think he directed the first season of the Fargo TV series, which is okay, but not really any other movies. And that was probably for good reason, because this was a box office bomb. Box office failure. It ended up grossing only $60,000. Now, part of that is because it got pulled from theaters, but let's be honest, $60,000? That's embarrassing even for 1994 money. The movie stars Julia Sweeney, who is the creator of the character Pat. The entire shtick on SNL was, you don't know if Pat is a man or a woman. Crazy.
What?
I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't really care if Pat is a man or a woman because Pat is annoying. I've answered the question for you. Sweeney created the character Pat O'Reilly, Neil something, I don't even remember the full name of the character. Pat. It's Pat. This character was created in, I believe, 1990, and it was a little bit of a success. I'm gonna be honest with you, I hated those sketches when they were on SNL. I wasn't a fan of this character in the first place, so coming into the movie, I was like, this might not be that great. Now, of course, on SNL, there was also a character, Chris. Chris was another androgynous character who was kind of the love interest of Pat. On SNL, this character was played by Dana Carvey, but in the movie, the role is taken over by David Foley.
I believe that is a perfectly reasonable response considering the circumstances.
Now, I love David Foley. I think he's hilarious. He was great on Kids in the Hall and News Radio, but he falls a little flat in this role. I am kind of into his weird haircut, though.
I think you might be missing the point.
I think that this movie could have been improved if Crispin Glover had played this role.
I mean, I would admit to being a little confused.
Now, I know that I'm a bit of a little Crispin Glover fanatic, but I really, really think that he could have made that role extremely interesting. In fact, I think that his oddness would have just made this movie truly amazing.
I saw part of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
If you're gonna have the obnoxious character of Pat, you need to have the counterpart to that be extremely bizarre almost. And David Foley, although I think he's great, he didn't really bring the weirdness. Crispin Glover would have. There are a lot of really great cameos in this film, so we do get to see some exciting faces. That's unsurprising for an SNL skit turned movie. In addition to having Julia Sweeney, we also have Kathy Griffin and Phil Lamar. Now, you might remember the fact that all three of those actors were actually in Pulp Fiction, which also came out in 1994. A lot of critics like to say that that means that those actors were in both the best and the worst movies of 1994.
Is that a fact?
Another interesting connection to that is that Julia Sweeney was actually great friends with Tarantino, so Tarantino actually is an uncredited scriptwriter for It's Pat, which is bonkers because it's not the best script. So what is this movie all about? Before I start talking about the movie, let's just talk for a moment about Pat. Pat is an annoying, I know I've already said that one, egotistical human with indeterminable gender who is wearing a fat suit, got the glasses on, the floofy curly hair with the crazy times. And Pat is so extremely annoying that they are constantly getting fired from all of their jobs, and it's just not realizing that they are the problem.
Oh, come on. I work like a dog. I had 23 jobs last year. How many did you have?
Just the one.
Part of the fatal flaw of this film is that an obnoxious character can be funny in a short sketch, but when you try to translate that to an hour-and-a-half long movie, it doesn't work so well because Pat's just annoying. You just don't want to watch Pat.
Ouch.
So let's get into what actually happens in this film. The movie literally opens up with a vaginal canal and a Pat voiceover. I don't even know how to deal with that. I don't even know how to deal with vaginal canal being the first thing that I have to see in a movie. I wanna like that. I don't. I think it's an esophagus that you go through. I don't know, what is this? Ugh. Then we get an all too long title sequence that includes the It's Pat song. And the animation during this, it has like the blue and pink man and woman symbols. And it looks almost like the title sequence of One Too Many to me. Ugh, not great. So Pat, still in voiceover, takes us through the 4th grade, takes us to high school, and then we get to see adult Pat being a mailman.
And you're being audited. Hope you get to keep your home.
But it turns out that Pat is also nosy, so of course they are reading all of the mail, and then they get fired by Larry Hankin.
Got a complaint from Mr. and Mrs. Cogan. Seems you opened a letter from their son and you told him he was gay.
This is actually one of the funnier moments of the movie for me. I will give this credit, I giggled. While firing Pat, Larry Hankin is putting on a bulletproof vest because obviously Pat might go postal.
Just that I kind of have to let you go.
And it's just a very small little moment, but I think it's clever. Now that we're in adult Pat's life, we get to meet other characters. For example, Kathy Griffin, who plays herself.
Oh, hi, Kathy.
And his neighbor. I want to love her so much. I don't in this. I don't. I love her in Shakes the Clown. She doesn't do anything in this movie. She's nothing in It's Pat. Then Pat goes to a store and we get to meet Kathy Najimy, who plays Tippy, a character who goes nowhere.
Oh, Pat, what do you want?
And you might notice that I'm not really describing much of a plot to you right now. That's because there's really not a lot of plot in this movie. We will get to one, but we gotta drudge it out. Pat begins to get reflective over the fact that they do not have a job and people are supposed to have jobs. So, oh no, Pat's gotta find a new job. But Pat's kind of enjoying not working. So while wandering around, we get to see moments where this movie tries to be a little bit of an absurdist comedy. For example, Pat is seeing happy employees everywhere that they go, and then they see astronauts. It's so wacky.
Wacky?
The astronauts are happy with their job, right? That's the shtick, I think. This is a movie that's supposed to be slapstick, but it doesn't succeed at that. So don't throw in absurdist stuff as well. Stay in your lane, Pat. Pick a side.
I don't even know if Pat is a man or a woman.
Pat gets a job at a sushi restaurant, and this is when we get one of those really stupid gags that work really well in Austin Powers, but almost nowhere else, which is that one of the customers is asking, is Pat a boy or a girl? We're getting subtitles in the screen because they're not speaking in English. And of course, somebody walks in front of the subtitles so we can't see it while using a vacuum cleaner so that we can't hear it. Ooh.
Pat, you're not pointing anywhere near Springfield. It's over here, Apu. Hey, what you doing?
Just don't, I don't get it. I don't get why that's supposed to. Pat then gets fired from the sushi job and takes a job as a gas man. There is not a single fart joke relating to that, which is a missed opportunity if you ask me.
Hi, I'm Pat. I'm your gas management specialist and advisor.
Oh. Well, pleased to meet you.
But that job as a gas man does take Pat into a strip club where Pat meets the love interest, Chris. I do think that it's cute that both of them are androgynous, and Pat, played by a woman, Julia Sweeney, looks a little bit more masculine, whereas Chris, who is played by David Foley, looks a little bit more feminine. The two of them bond over the fact that they both like the same things.
You know what I hate? Are bad, boring movies.
Me too. We're so alike.
Another great gag. And we get a few moments of physical comedy, but those are followed up by really dumb puns.
Oh, I crushed my nuts. Oh, shoot. There goes my afternoon snack.
Pat and Chris end up getting engaged and they meet their new neighbors, Kyle and Stacy, who are of course played by Charles Rocket and Julia Hayden. Charles Rocket is incredible. I would say that his character is the best part of this film. He truly goes through a transformation that is interesting. Although I will say, again, I love him. I think he's great. I think that Crispin Glover would have done a better job in this role.
You seem to be
People try
distraught.
to make me sound a lot weird, and
Yeah.
I'm strong, you know, I'm strong.
Kyle has a crazy downward spiral, and I think that Crispin Glover would have made that really interesting and exciting. Crispin Glover, I love you. I think maybe I just want Crispin Glover to play all of the roles in this film. I would actually really enjoy that. Kyle becomes more and more obsessed with Pat as the film goes on. Kyle finds Pat to be extremely provocative, and I think that Kyle likes the mystery of not knowing if Pat is a man or a woman. Now, the character of Kyle, I would say he's kind of like the B plot of the film. However, I don't know how I would define the A plot. There really isn't one. It's basically just Pat getting jobs, getting fired from jobs, having minor conflicts with Chris, trying to figure things out. Lots and lots of little sketches kind of all meshed into one movie. Kyle, in his quest for learning more about Pat, discovers that Pat keeps a diary where all of the deepest, darkest secrets are stored. Kyle figures that, of course, this diary should include information that will give a clue as to Pat's gender. There were a couple of little things that I felt like could have been interesting, but then they just sucked. For example, we learned that Pat was born in Middlesex, New Jersey. That is an interesting way to talk about people who are non-binary, but we don't. There's no actual interesting commentary here. Now, the reason that we learned that Pat was born in Middlesex, New Jersey is because Pat has to go get a copy of their birth certificate in order to give it to Kyle. Kyle is, again, on the hunt, so Kyle has come up with all of these different ploys of getting information out of Pat. So when Pat goes to get the birth certificate, Pat pulls it out of a drawer in the kitchen.
Do you have a birth certificate?
Yes, I do, sir.
Good. Good.
Have you ever kept your birth certificate in the kitchen? I understand that the movie needs to like move along, but what? We're not on SNL anymore. We have a set that is bigger than one room. You don't have to confine it to one space, but you did. Also around this time in the film, we get one of the worst lines, which is is that a banana in your pants or are you just happy to see me?
Whoa, Pat. Is that a banana in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
I think you know the answer to that question.
No, it's a banana. If you're hungry, get your own. This is my snack.
It's another hilarious gag about we don't know if Pat's a guy or a girl. Great stuff, guys. Since Pat is engaged to Chris, of course we have to have an engagement party scene. There are so many people at this engagement party. How do Pat and Chris know so many people? It's kind of absurd. And of course, the hilarity here is that in the same way that Pat's friends can't tell if she's a man or a woman, also Chris's friends can't tell Chris's gender identity, so it's really funny and everybody wants to know.
This is something we'll both enjoy.
So, are you gonna change your name?
Which one are you asking?
The engagement party ends up with Pat getting very drunk and singing a lot of karaoke, which I did not need.
Dude looks like a lady.
Kyle, still obsessed with Pat, says, hey, I could turn this into one of those TV clip show appearances. And everybody will fall in love with Pat in the same way that I have. And also maybe I can figure out if Pat's a dude or a chick. Spoiler, we never find out. The real answer is Pat's annoying. That's the only thing Pat is. After Pat's TV appearance on this clip show making fun of Pat, Pat is like on top of the world. Pat's like, holy crap, I made it. I'm a big TV star, because again, egotistical. And Kyle decides to celebrate that TV appearance with Pat by doing a sexy little dance and trying to make out with Pat. And it's a little uncomfortable, I'll be honest with you. Not because I'm unsure of Pat's gender identity, but because Kyle is creepy, and at this point in the film, he has turned into true creepy dude.
You must be awfully exhausted after such an exciting day.
Again, that would have been so cool if it was Crispin Glover. Charles Rocket did a really great job.
Why don't you just loosen up a little bit, Pat? Maybe we could have some fun.
Regardless, Pat does not accept these advances. And now for perhaps one of the weirdest parts of the film. Pat is walking down the street, and WEEN pulls up.
Oh, we're WEEN.
That's right, WEEN. My notes say, why the hell is WEEN here?
What's a WEEN?
If you're not familiar with WEEN, they are a kind of experimental rock band. A lot of their songs sound very different. I actually was not familiar with WEEN until relatively recently. I actually am a go-go dancer in a surf rock band called the Isotopes, who some of you might be familiar with because of course that also features Carl and producer Chris from Who Are These Podcasts. And every single year for Halloween, we used to do a Halloween show where we would do covers of WEEN songs. I discovered during that time that I am not a fan of WEEN. I say that, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I listen to WEEN by choice sometimes now. That's really embarrassing for me. I don't know why I'm even admitting that to you guys. Don't tell Carl. He'll want to play more WEEN songs. Fucking WEEN. WEEN asks Pat to play a show with them. He decides to play the tuba. Kind of works for WEEN actually, I'm gonna be honest with you. That actually is on brand with them, I feel like. He's also doing like the... and getting the whole audience to do it. It's a great show. Everybody has a wonderful time apparently. And then he says this line.
Hey, you guys, I played with the WEEN! What? Oh.
Now, I might not like WEEN very much, maybe a little bit more than I'd care to admit, but I will say that WEEN holds a very special place in my heart. Before my grandma passed, she and I would email every single day, and we would just kind of tell each other what was going on. So I had emailed her this particular day, and I told her, the Isotopes have a show tonight. And that show happened to be one of these Halloween Isotope shows. Now, I didn't explain any of that to her because I was like, she doesn't even know what the Isotopes are, nevertheless, WEEN. I'm not getting into that with my 96-year-old grandmother. But my grandma, being the absolutely incredible lady that she was, she responded back to me saying this. Kaylee, I tried to Google to learn more about the Isotopes. I see that tonight's program is featuring WEEN songs. Now I have to Google WEEN. Here's hoping tonight's program is great. Exciting. Love Grandma. Even grandmas love it. When my grandma passed, I actually got her copies of Mr. Bean on VHS, so maybe she actually would have liked it, Pat. She was a pretty incredible woman, and I just love that Pat calls them the WEEN, which made me think of my gram being so extremely sweet. Back into this crappy movie now. The WEEN performance kind of makes Chris and Pat's relationship a little bit rockier, and Chris ends up dumping Pat. The reason that it makes the relationship a little bit rockier is because Pat is being a fucking asshole about everything. Pat's like, look at how great I am. I was on TV, I played with the WEEN.
Hey, we have a celebrity in the building! Me!
Pat ends up having this weird nightmare sequence, which I kind of liked. I'm pretty sure that there's a terrifying part where the phrase, "you're a lettuce head," gets uttered.
You're a stupid lettuce head.
Oh no!
That is a lettuce head. Meanwhile, Kyle's obsession is growing more and more and more and more, and Kyle ends up stealing Pat's laptop that has the digital diary on it. Somehow this makes Pat a little bit self-conscious about their androgyny, and so Pat decides to get a makeover.
Fantastic. Oh, that's quite flattering. The minimalist.
That's a really dumb scene too. The result of the makeover is just that Pat has shorter curls.
Oh, I love my new look!
Cool. Pat, still on the quest for a job, goes to Kathy Griffin's workplace, which is a radio station, and asks Kathy for a job. Kathy's like, no, are you stupid? But while there, Pat ends up answering the phone. Remind you of anyone?
But this idea that he has that he was sort of like underpaid super talent. We wrote him a bunch of questions and he went out on a red carpet and asked questions that we wrote. I mean, that was it. And he answered our phone.
And the boss of the radio station, played by Tim Meadows, ends up thinking that Pat is really great at answering phones and an even better radio host than Kathy Griffin, so Pat ends up taking that job over. I'll be honest that actually kind of checks out because I can't imagine Kathy Griffin being a very good radio host. I think that her best line in this movie is when she's like, I'm getting ready for a date.
You can't just barge in here whenever you want to, okay? I'm trying to get ready for a date, all right?
It's funny because nobody would want to date her, right? I'm not great at jokes, you guys, but I might be better than this movie. Meanwhile, Kyle is trying to get the password in order to be able to access the diary. All that Kyle knows is that it's a word in the dictionary. So Kyle tries every single word in the dictionary. Of course, because that's what this movie would do, it is the last word that is in the dictionary, which is xythum. Now, I feel like xythum is an ingredient in things like xythum gum, but I tried to read a little bit about it and it seems like it's a fermented beer sort of thing from ancient Greece. What's really important though is that that's not the last word in the dictionary. According to my mild Google searches, it is zizitha, ziziva, ziziva. Which is a little bit weird because remember when I mentioned that this movie only grossed $60,000? That got me on like a whole big like, I need to figure out what the lowest grossing movie of all time was. And it turns out it's Zizek's Road, which is very similar to Ziziva, right?
Interesting.
Perhaps its Pat is more cerebral than I thought. It sent me on some weird tangents. Of course, figuring out the password to the diary ends up being totally fruitless because there's no information about if Pat is a boy or a girl in there. Sorry, Kyle. Chris decides that Pat is never gonna get it together, so Chris is like, I'm going to Tibet, I don't wanna do this anymore. And Kyle tries to blackmail Pat to figure out if they are a boy or a girl.
I'm wanting to be telling you that I'm having something that none of your other callers have.
What's that, your sanity?
No, your diary.
What?
I think that that's Kyle's idea. It's very confusing. All that really matters is that the blackmail results in Pat and Kyle going into the Ripley's Believe It or Not Hall of Mirrors. And Kyle is now dressed like Pat because again, obsessed. Crazy obsession, which is great. I do like that aspect of the movie actually.
We're in.
They end up in a chase and somehow end up on the catwalk to a WEEN show. Pat falls off the stage and gets caught by a hook, which ends up derobing Pat from the waist down. Pat is then lowered down and all of the audience members at the WEEN show get to finally figure out if Pat is a boy or a girl. But just before Kyle finds out, the security guards get him, and I don't really know why the security guards are after him. It doesn't really seem like he's doing anything wrong to them, right? Like they wouldn't know what was going on, but whatever. Kyle never finds out. He gets arrested by security guards, detained. We do get to see Julia Sweeney's naked butt here. I do prefer seeing Sydney Sweeney's boobies, but that'll be for another movie review, I suppose. No relation, by the way. Pat realizes during all of this that they actually really love Chris and go to chase after Chris, who is on the way to Tibet on a cruise ship, which I feel like is whatever. I'm not gonna even ask about it. Chris is like surrounded by couples, except Chris is all by themselves. It's very like, oh, poor Chris. And Pat apologizes for the first time, which for Chris is basically what they needed. So yay, they're back together in the end and they end up getting married. Neither one of them is wearing a wedding dress, so we still don't know. The end of the film really truly does wrap everything up into a neat little package because Kathy, who had lost her job at the radio station because Pat took over, ends up returning to that job, and then Kyle ends up calling into the show to talk about his interest in cross-dressing. So everybody's back to themselves. Kyle has learned a lot about himself. He had a character arc, but you know, for the most part, it's just, I can't imagine that Pat is going to change in any way, shape, or form. I guess the thing that I learned from this movie is that the only people who know Pat's gender identity are going to be Chris and WEEN fans. So if you are a WEEN fan, please let me know. I would love to hear that information. Actually, I'm not invested at all. Perhaps that's the real problem with this movie, is that I don't give a fuck if Pat is a man or a woman. What I give a fuck about is that Pat is not a character that I like. Pat's not likable. You can have an annoying character that has redeeming qualities, but Pat doesn't have any. And that's what makes this movie suck. Although it would have been better if Crispin Glover had played 2 roles in it. Yeah, I would have liked that. So with all of that being said, this movie was probably up there in the worst SNL skit turned into a movies of all time. It's really bad. It certainly was the biggest box office failure of those movies, and I would be shocked if we can find one that's worse than this. That said, I am looking forward to trying. So out of 7 thumbs up, how many thumbs would I give this movie? I would give it a 2.5, I think. It's really dumb, but there are a couple of funny moments.
What I have to give you people is tough love. It may not sound pretty, but I can help you. That's right, I'm Pat. I'm here to help you all night long.
So I can't give it nothing. I liked the character of Kyle. I want to see It's Kyle, the movie. That sounds like a way better movie to me. I would love to hear what you guys think about It's Pat. Let me know your least favorite SNL skits into movies. Let me know your favorite also. I will be doing more of these in this little mini series where we talk about these things. I'm really enjoying it. It's fun to watch dumb comedies. This was maybe one level too dumb of a dumb comedy, but perhaps we'll get luckier next time. I can't wait for the next time. Thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me, and I'll see you guys all soon. Bye.